This is a tale about trust, honesty, and the painful clarity that comes when the person you plan to spend your life with reveals their true priorities. It goes beyond a simple canceled ceremony. It's about spotting the complete absence of mutual respect. Just 16 days before our wedding day, my fiancée disappeared without a trace. When I finally discovered her whereabouts, I understood that losing the wedding was actually the smallest part of the nightmare. My phone turned into an object of constant anxiety. Every glance at it showed only silence from the woman I was set to marry in barely over 2 weeks. I'm not the obsessive type who demands constant updates. I worked a steady job as an accountant, and our relationship felt ordinary in every way. We argued over typical things, like dish duty or whether her mother's dream venue was worth the extra cost. Every detail was set. My tuxedo waited in the closet still tagged. The reception hall was reserved. 200 invitations had gone out. And I'd spent 3 full months practicing our first dance, so I wouldn't let her down. There was zero warning that she might simply vanish. It began on a Friday when she gave me a goodbye kiss, saying she was heading out to handle some final wedding details with her maid of honor. Seemed completely routine, until she failed to return that evening. At first I stayed calm, assuming they'd gotten caught up chatting or eating out. But past midnight, with calls going straight to voicemail, a heavy dread settled in. I texted once, then again tried calling more. Silence. By 2 in the morning, I sat alone in our darkened living room, phone clutched tightly, telling myself her battery had died or she'd decided to stay over. Morning arrived, still no word, and genuine fear took over, not irritation, but the shaking hands, shallow breathing terror that something awful had occurred. I phoned her mother first, struggling to sound steady. She picked up sounding oddly relaxed, claiming her daughter was simply occupied with wedding tasks and that I should understand how things get hectic. When I pressed about her exact location, she grew evasive, mentioning some special surprise the girls had arranged and urging me to calm down, like my fiancé hadn't been unreachable for more than a full day. Her father was blunter, sounding annoyed and telling me to back off and give her breathing room, adding that this was her final opportunity to enjoy herself before settling down, as though marrying me equaled a life sentence. I reached out to all 3 bridesmaids, receiving nearly identical responses. "She's okay, she deserves this, you're overreacting." It felt orchestrated, like they'd rehearsed the same excuses while I remained clueless. By Sunday evening, sleepless for 48 hours, a deep emptiness replaced the panic because something was seriously wrong, yet everyone acted as if it were normal. Late that night, I resorted to desperate measures, logging into Instagram anonymously and checking her friends' profiles for any hint. First, I found the maid of honor's page, and there she was, posted just hours earlier, alive and well at a beachside bar in Miami Beach, over 1,000 miles away, arm around strangers, drink in hand. My heart sank. This wasn't a casual night out. Scrolling further through the bridesmaids' accounts revealed more. Her laughing on a yacht, dancing at clubs, dining at upscale spots, all time-stamped over the previous days while I'd been gripped by fear. The terror morphed into humiliation and fury. She hadn't vanished. She'd simply chosen not to include me. At 4 a.m. Monday she finally rang, club noise roaring behind her, laughter everywhere. Her apology for the missed calls sounded as casual as forgetting an errand. I demanded to know where she'd been. She laughed and explained it was a surprise bachelorette getaway the girls had organized. Why the secrecy? Why let me believe the worst? Her voice shifted. "I knew you'd lose it, so I kept quiet." The trip would last 2 full weeks, returning only 2 days before our ceremony. I reminded her of the scheduled vendor meetings she'd promised to attend with me. "You handle it. You're better at those things," she replied, her friends giggling in the background. When I said disappearing without notice wasn't acceptable, she labeled me controlling. This is exactly why I hid it, you're overreacting. More laughter, someone calling her name then. I have to go. Don't spam my phone, I'm trying to enjoy myself. Click. 10 minutes later I tried again, blocked. Sitting in the dark, still in yesterday's clothes, I finally grasped it. This wasn't about a party. It was her deliberate choice to exclude me, deceive me, let me agonize, then fault me for reacting like any normal person. Her entire circle knew and approved, everyone but me. In that instant, I saw I wasn't viewed as her equal, but as a nuisance to sideline. The woman I'd planned forever with had just demonstrated exactly how little I mattered. The core problem wasn't the getaway or the dishonesty. It was the total collapse of partnership. When your partner and everyone close to her conspires to hide the truth and lets you suffer rather than speak openly, that's not care, it's exclusion. The next day I woke on the couch, briefly disoriented, until the truth slammed back. My fiancé was blocked me while vacationing in Miami, leaving me to manage our wedding alone. With unsteady hands I brewed coffee, sat at our table, and stared at the thick wedding planner she'd assembled. Pages of tabs, contacts, charts. 13 days left and the bride had just ordered me not to disturb her fun. Checking our shared account, I saw charges pouring in. Bottle service, gourmet meals, yacht fees exceeding our rent. She was spending our joint savings, money meant for our future, on a secret escape. That clarity led to my decision. Not from spite, but from suddenly seeing our future plainly. Me waiting alone while she did as she pleased and dismissed my feelings as drama. I opened her binder and began the calls. Canceling so close to the date was brutal. The venue's policy meant losing the full deposit plus 20%. Around $8,000 vanished. The caterer had already purchased special items and booked staff. I owed 60% regardless. The photographer's no refund clause within 30 days cost another $3,000. Florist, DJ, baker. Each call brought sympathy, then firm terms and steep losses. By midday, nearly $20,000 had evaporated, each transfer an email feeling like erasing our shared dreams while she likely lounged carefree. The toughest task was informing the guests, 200 people who'd rearranged schedules, booked travel, purchased outfits. I sent one honest group email. The wedding was off. My fiancé had left for a 2-week trip without informing me. We were no longer marrying, and I apologized for the disruption. Sending it made me nauseous, knowing the gossip and side-taking would follow. Within an hour, my phone exploded, worried friends, puzzled family, each chat forcing me to repeat the humiliating truth. Her parents called next, not to check on me, but to accuse me of overreacting. Her mother insisted it was pre-wedding nerves, the trip a coping mechanism, and that I was punishing her unfairly. Everyone would view me as the unreasonable one. I countered that needing space usually includes communication, not lies and blocks. Her tone sharpened. She warned I'd regret it, that I was discarding a wonderful woman over one slip. Her father was harsher, claiming I was ruining his daughter's image and shaming their family, insisting I should have waited for her return. I reminded him she'd already decided by orchestrating the secret and cutting contact. He slammed the phone down. My own parents disappointed too. My mother wept, begging me to delay rather than end it, calling it normal jitters. My father said I was too stubborn, that relationships require swallowing pride sometimes. At 31, I was still being told I'd understand later. Friends divided, some backed me, others preached compromise as if I were at fault. Her bridesmaids texted viciously, branding me toxic and controlling, claiming I was destroying her happiness. One even suggested I was glad for the excuse to escape, that I'd never truly cared. How had I become the villain when I was the one left behind? A week later she returned early. Her mother had informed her of the cancellations, forcing her to confront it. She entered our apartment casually, tanned and cheerful, asking about my week like nothing had happened. I told her I'd canceled the wedding. Her face drained shock, then panic. Tears followed, dramatic and loud, demanding how I could be so heartless, how I could shame her publicly. I felt only emptiness. I'd already grieved everything. She accused me of ruining her life, embarrassing her family, leaving her unsure what to say to people. I asked what she'd expected, me waiting quietly while she partied, then acting normal. She said yes, insisting it was merely a vacation I'd exaggerated. When I listed the lies, the fear she'd caused, the blocking, she grew furious, shouting that I resented her friends and used this to control her. Tied down, her exact phrase, as if marriage were chains she'd tried to postpone. I thought of the dance lessons, the extra hours worked for her dream honeymoon, and realized I didn't recognize her. She left for her parents' house that night. I simply agreed. Surrounded by boxes and voided agreements, I saw that everyone urging forgiveness cared only about convenience, not fairness. Refusing to comply made me the issue. In the following weeks, she rewrote the narrative masterfully, portraying me as manipulative and jealous, posting vague warnings about toxicity and red flags. Her circle amplified it, and strangers messaged me calling me awful. Even longtime acquaintances began doubting, thinking cancellation over a party was extreme. Others withdrew entirely to avoid conflict. Untangling our lives proved exhausting. 3 years together meant shared lease bills, a credit card with $15,000 in wedding debt. She refused responsibility, insisting I caused the cancellation so I should pay everything. Her father offered to buy my lease share if I vanished quietly. Exhausted, I accepted, losing my deposit to escape. I packed into my brother's guest room while she stayed elsewhere, boxing up our history and wishing honesty had prevented it all. 6 weeks later, she appeared at my workplace with her sister, waiting dramatically. She claimed she sought closure and an adult discussion. I said there was nothing left. She insisted I owed her after what I'd caused. Her sister echoed that the family worried that I'd devastated her. I asked directly what she wanted, an apology. She wanted me to admit I'd overreacted, that insecurity had destroyed us, that trusting her would have saved everything. Something inside me settled permanently. I told her plainly. A secret 2-week Miami trip wasn't standard, blocking me wasn't normal, letting me fear for her life wasn't a joke. I no longer cared about her narrative or public opinion. I'd accept being the villain in her tale if it meant living with self-respect. She cried harder, admitting she'd felt trapped by the approaching wedding and hoped pushing me would force me to end it, sparing her the blame. The trip was partly a test to see if I'd break. Her sister looked stunned, unaware. I felt only weariness. I drove off. That was our final meaningful exchange. Later, I learned through others that she'd met someone in Miami. Nothing official, but enough that her friends covered for her, framing it as her last freedom. Some eventually apologized guiltily. I ignored them. Their role in my panic attacks couldn't be undone. She relocated 8 months later for a clean slate. I welcomed the distance. A year on, I saw her at a cafe with a new man, both content. I expected emotion but felt only detachment. She noticed me, cycled through feelings, but neither approached. We were simply two separate lives. Walking away, I knew I hadn't forgiven her and likely never would, but I'd released her weight. She'd crafted me as the villain. I'd let it linger briefly. Now I held my own truth. I was someone who'd valued himself enough to leave. I owed her nothing. This story shows that sometimes the problem removes itself if you allow it. He could have overlooked every warning, married anyway, and lived with quiet loneliness. Instead, he accepted short-term hurt to avoid lifelong regret. The true win wasn't being proven correct. It was reaching indifference, free from needing validation. What do you think? Did he make the right choice by canceling, or should he have waited for her return and discussed it calmly? And more broadly, when exactly does a relationship shift from salvageable to irreparably broken? Share your views below. I read them all.